my friends, I'm Rick, and you're not. This is yet another weekend. This is the first weekend of November of 2023, or the last Sunday of it anyway. The last day of the weekend. Got little Missy over here sitting. She's behaving herself in the damn box. So in the late 30s, FDR. I want to say 38, 39. Don't quote me on the exact date, but FDR's looks at the situation in the country's, and it's the worst economic event in its history, the Depression. Upwards of 10%, well, 1 in 10 people, working adults in this country are not employed. And it's important to take into account a few different things that doesn't get brought up a lot, I think, when we talk about that subject. One of them being is that, the unemployment rate was 10%. That's far more, it's far larger impact wise than you would think at a glance. 10% is considerable. 1 out of 10 adults, 1 out of 10 working adults in America were unemployed. But we need to take that into a hair higher, because keep in mind the lion's share of the workforce in 1930s America are men. I'm not saying that to be, to be whatever the hell you want to call it. I'm just being the truth, and it's one of those truths that tend to get ignored or not, just avoided. So when we talk about just how devastating that was, when you figure that probably 80% of the workforce, maybe 85% of the workforce in the 1930s were men of all ages and ethnicities, 10% of them being unemployed is quite devastating to the economy. Much more devastating than would 10% of a current situation today. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a bad day. I'm saying, yeah, it would be real bad. But my point being, though, is that the workforce was so the depression was far more of an impact than what people give it credit for. In part was because so much of the work of the American families in the United States in that time period was dependent on the sole breadwinner of the household, typically pop, dad, grandpa, whatever, went to work every day, slaved his way away at whatever it was he did to bring money home to the family, and mom stayed home with the kids, and grandma and stayed home, and this pays in together, because this is before FDR created Social Security, there was no recourse. If you got to be an elderly person, there's an example. I grew up watching a TV series called The Waltons. I really love The Waltons, and I watch reruns of it even to this day. Especially the older stuff. The older the better, in my opinion. So in the Walton nuclear family, mom did not have a job. It was very rare when she did. She a couple of times took a job, and that became a problem between her and her husband, and her and the kids, because she wasn't home. So, the boys all worked, mostly at the family business. Grandpa worked. Grandpa worked until he died. Even though he was told over and over again by his son that he didn't have to work nearly as hard as he was, let alone have to work at all, Grandpa was conditioned, as most men are in this country, to equate their self-worth by their working history. It's another bunch of stigmas that we tend to dance and step around and ignore and take out of context on a regular basis as well. But so what I'm getting at is that before the creation of Social Security, if you got old, you worked until you died, or you died. There were a few institutions, mostly charity-based, that would help some people, but there was very few recourses. And if you had no money, and so you spent your whole life working your ass off, and ideally to buy a home, because when you get to a certain point where you can't hold a job, you can't pay for rent. So the idea being is you bought your home and paid for it before you hit that retirement age. I understand that full well because my wife and I did not buy our first home until I was 50. Is it 52? So I gotta live to be 80 something to make sure my house gets paid off. So in their cases, I'm going to have to work until I'm 70 plus, but I've still got Social Security, maybe. So we didn't have things like pensions. Pensions weren't very common if they existed at all. You didn't have benefits hardly to speak of. There's a reason why there was a huge union movement about that same period of time too. And that's a whole different set of videos. But at the end of the day, you had to work your butt off. And most people who were unemployed wasn't just a bunch of unemployed lazy buffs who didn't want to work. No, there just wasn't enough working around. The economy had suffered a crucial blow after the fall of, after the roaring 20s, everything come crashing down, in part because of a big business and some big corporate shillholes who screwed everybody over, but also in part because the system was inevitably going to crash. And I think we're in one of those positions now because prior to the we had the quote golden era. So we had this golden era of the like the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts and all this other crap of the largest in charity and public, because they built a lot of public libraries and universities and things like this, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, they got to be so damn wealthy because they were greedy and they pinched everybody as hard as they could. And their philosophy was, I made my money, go make your money. And if you can't make your money working for me, well, that's on you, right? And so in the same venue today, how many people do you know currently working have a pension? A lot of people back in the early 90s, we saw this push for corporations to get away from union or from pensions, period, because that's money that they have to keep paying into long after you no longer work for them, and they don't like that. That's bullshit. They shouldn't have to do it. So they concocted this idea of a 401k. And a 401k is convenient in a lot of ways, and it's terrible in a lot of ways too. A 401, so any kind of privatized retirement program, that's what at the end of the day, when you hear these Republicans going on about, well, we have to do something about Social Security, it's going to bankrupt us. We have to do something about Medicare because these entitlement programs are going to bankrupt the country. No, they're not. And they know they're not. That is not what they're going to do. These so-called entitlement programs are entitlement because we pay for it. We pay for it. We keep paying for it. We pay for it every time we get a check. Here's a couple key differences between that 401k program that the pensions, they replaced most pensions with 401ks. 401ks, also dependent on you paying into that program. You control how much goes into that program. When you're poor and you haven't got a lot of money, you put as very little as possible in that program. If you got a nice fat check every week and you're comfortable and you get your bills paid and you have a comfortable cushion left over, if you can pay all your bills and still have like 20% of your paycheck every week, hell, that's the way it ought to work. Ought to being the key operative here, right? But no. So when that happens, you don't put very much money away into self-starter programs, whereas the government takes your money. You get that money taken out of every check you work, they take that money. It's never going to not get there. It's never not going to get paid, as opposed to the potentials for 401k. Another thing, at any time, you can tap your 401k. You can borrow money from your 401k. You can actually cash your 401a in for its value at a huge hit. You'll never be able to do that with your Social Security. If you work in the majority of the country works in the category that pays into Social Security, so when you get to the point where you stop working, they start paying you back the money that you paid into the program. See, so when I hear some of these ass clowns like Matt Gaetz and stuff going on and on about it, as if they treat it as if this is money that's wrongfully being stolen from the government coffers, that somehow that the government should never have to pay this stuff back. So our tax money that you and I, we all paid into, isn't our money. These handful of people decide how our money's going to be spent, even though we have very little say in that because they just basically do what they want. And unless we hold them, unless we can get people to hold them accountable, because that's the danger, right? So anyway, that's also part of the way the system is set up. It's inevitable. It's just part of the bullshit that is what it is to make this system work as long as it has. Until somebody tries to screw it up and change it, right? So when I hear this stuff about this Social Security issue, so FDR come up with the idea of creating a safety net for the poor and not the poor but the infirm and the aged. So people who physically aren't physically capable of working. We've all seen them. If you've gone to, you go grocery shopping, and sometimes they'll have some grandma, some 90-year-old person out there who looks like they could barely stand up, will be sitting there and offering you samples, for example. Others might be the greeters at Walmart. You go into the door and there'll be a couple, people there that if they're just dumb luck that they're not needing a walker to stand up, and they're there not because they're bored and they want something to do. They're there because they have no choice. They're there because they need that extra cash in their home because there's not enough to go around. So in a country that's the wealthiest country in the world, I grew up with hearing this all the time about how America has got the most money, the most brains, the most ingenuity, the most everything. Then how come is it so many of us are poor? And that poor divide keeps getting broader, a lot broader. When I was a kid, the middle class was much bigger than it is now, because you can't tell. You can't tell. It's gotten to the point where a majority of the middle class are poor because you cannot tell the facts. It's just a level of poor. See, there is part of the oxymoron that is life in America, is that we're geared to spend money to buy shit. I mean, I am literally surrounded by a horde of crap that we don't need. No idea why we're keeping it. No know why we bought it in the first damn place, or how we ended up with it. Oh, I got a lot of ideas on that, but that's not the point. The point, though, is that, if you got a bigger income, you buy a bigger house. If you have a bigger income, you buy a nicer car or a bigger car. Or if you got enough money, you buy yourself some recreational vehicles. You start buying things like RVs and campers, and and a lot of that was doable when I was a kid. Now you need 2 jobs, 3 jobs to pay for all this. I got down and started thinking about putting a list up of stuff. If you look at the crap as adults that we pay today, that as our parents as adults when we were children did not have to pay. My parents had a phone bill. They had a phone bill to the house, and we had several phones in the house, but they were all attached to one line. And so we had one phone bill, one line bill a month. My current household has 2 phone bills. I have my cell phone and my wife's cell phone, and them combined together cost more than the old landline would have ever cost. All right, because of all the extra bells and whistles that go with them. So there's an increase. The internet. My parents didn't have the internet. They didn't even get cable until the late 80s. Like 87, and so was when they first got cable, and my aunt and uncles in Des Moines, had cable since the 70s. So we were behind the times. That they just brought cable to town, basically. But the point I'm getting at is that my internet for Mediacom is $129 a month. I don't have anything else. I don't have cable. We had to cancel that last year when we needed to replace our furnace. So we don't have cable. So my electric bill was $124. That includes gas and electric, versus $129 for my internet. And I use the same amount of internet every month. I mean, it's pretty consistent. So why is it why is it so goddamn expensive? So right now I'm almost $200 a month that my dad would never have had. He would only had that one phone bill, not 2, and he would never have had the internet to pay, right? And let's just not stop there, because we talk about incidentals. Well, he never had a laptop. He had a typewriter. You don't replace a typewriter very often. You just replace the ribbons. So he had a typewriter. He didn't have computers or electronics. He had some stereos and stuff. He was getting into that, so TVs and stuff, but nothing like we have now. And then we had, in addition to that, we just the list just goes down. Right, I'm going off on a tangent on this crap. So when we talk about getting rid of Social Security, this is ever since the Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, the fellow that led America through most of World War II, proposed this, being a Democrat. The Republicans started thumping their chest and ripping their hair out and wringing their hands and pleading to the heavens about how, oh my God, we're all going to destitute, and they're going to bankrupt the country, and they're going to ruin America, and we're going to create a social communist whatever. It didn't turn out that way, did it? Here we are, 80 years later, 70, 80 years later, several generations of people depend on these things. I never had a job in my life that had a pension. I had one job that had a 401k, and it was a joke. And that 401k never amounted to nothing. And then I had to switch jobs, and it came at a very bad time, and on very bad advice, I cashed my 401k in. Now I have no 401k, and I have no pension, and I'm still working. The only thing I have to depend on, or count on, so I don't have to work till I'm 90 and literally die trying to do a job, is Social Security. So it's very personal to me. And I've been paying into Social Security since 1980 or 1981. Since I was 13 or 14, I think. As soon as you start punching a check somewhere and you get a paycheck from somebody, they start taking that shit from you. I don't care what. It doesn't matter how young you are. You know, you might get a refund on your taxes or something, but you start paying. It's just like Medicare. We pay into Medicare. So we're going to get rid of Social Security. We got to get rid of it because it's going to bankrupt. It's going to kill the country. Well, it didn't help. It doesn't help that numerous administrations over the decades have tapped the Social Security revenue to utilize the money for other purposes. So they've borrowed against Social Security program numerous times. And that income comes in, and then it doesn't all go back out the door. So more people pay in than they get out of it. Although we've reached a crucial point in our population levels where this is where they start really ramping up the we're all going to go bankrupt bullshit, is because there's a lot more retiring Americans coming into the retirement age than there are working Americans coming in. So there's this growing consensus. I guess it's not a consensus. There's growing thoughts among some of the Republicans that, and a couple of the Democrats have made some kind of noises too, that maybe we need to raise the eligibility era for retirement from 67 to 70. So they already did it once. It used to be 65 for everybody, and then they turned it into 67. And I've resigned my fact that I'm going to work till I'm 70 anyway, because and then the IRS the Social Security Administration, the government's already tried to work a deal out back in the day. So if you retire at your age limit, so in my case 67, I get blah. But apparently I don't get 100% of what I'm entitled to. I only get like 80%. Go figure the math on that, because that don't make sense to me. It never has. But in order for me to get 120% or whatever, to get extra, you got to work another 3 years. So you work until you're 70 and you get 120% of what you paid in. That's to allow for things like interest. If you look at the millions of dollars that you've paid into your Social Security since you started paying, and it's got to be in the six-figure range for sure. If you've been working as long as me. So the idea being is that you paid in and they made interest off of it, and you're getting a little bit extra back in the process. Which is, they want to raise the hours, the time. The problem for me on that aspect is it's just screwing a whole new generations of young people. Oh, well, the current generations wouldn't be affected. Well, no, they wouldn't be affected. But your intent, it's just like this insidious corporate sleaze, this corporate creep against Medicare. That's a different video for a different day, because Medicare Advantage is not Medicare. It wouldn't say Advantage on there if it was actual Medicare. You know the difference? Here's the difference. For anybody who thinks they're getting some kind of deal for taking advantage, sure, you're getting some temporary, immediate results, but in the long run, you're going to die sooner. And that's because they're going to look at you on a case-by-case situation and decide whether or not you're entitled to have treatment. Whereas in Medicare, if you have Medicare and your doctor determines you need treatment, you have the treatment and Medicare pays for it. Now, there's a little percentage they don't pay for, but they pay for the lion's share of it. They pay for it. And they don't tell you no. Where any one of these companies, these privatized Medicare Advantage programs, can all tell you no. And then it's on you to fight them. When you're the sickest part of your life, and you're going to have to fight them to give you the treatment you want. In a way, this reminds me of the homeowner's insurance that I had when I first bought this house. My realtor set me up with something called American Home Shield. And in the first 2 years, we had American Home Shield. Our water heater had to be replaced. We needed to work on our furnace and a couple other minor things. And never did American Home Shield say no. They sent, I paid my deal. They sent a technician in. The technician did what they could do. If they couldn't win the case of the water heater, there was no fixing the water heater. American Shield replaced the water heater. That's a $900 water heater if you buy it off the shelf, not including installation. So, a couple of years after that, or a couple of years later, I get convinced by somebody to switch to another company called Choice. Choice is not first choice. They should be the last choice. There should be no choice at all, because you pay them and you pay them and you pay them, and then when shit really hits the fan, they won't do nothing. They'll cite everything they can come up with to say no. They also put limits on you, so you got so many days to reply to something, but they don't tell you this. They don't tell you this. They also don't talk to you about it. So you need to file they deny you. You need to file that counterclaim right then. You need to file it right then, and you need to get on the phone and talk to them in person and start your bitching. So I had them for 18 months, and the first time I needed them, my furnace had a problem. They wouldn't fix it. A predetermined problem, a pre-existing problem. Well, your paperwork, my agreement with you didn't say that. It just said that there was a problem. They would, you would send somebody here to fix the problem. Well, now you're saying that you won't do that. Oh, they'll send, no, they were willing to send somebody, but I'd have to pay for it. What good's that? I could get my own people to go do that. I could probably find a better priced one, right? So my employer also bought this program. And when their furnace started having problems, it took them 8 months of fighting them nonstop, and threatening some lawyers involved, threatening to get a lawyer involved for the Choice to actually hold up their end of this program and fix their furnace. And as of this moment, the furnace is still not fixed. They're waiting on something. There's still a delay. Okay? So that convinced me, my own experience with them with my furnace. I told them where to go. I told Choice to cancel my subscription, and boy, they didn't like that, man. They called me 10, 12 times, kept pushing me, wanting me to come back, blah, blah, blah. I told them where to go. And I says no. And then I went back to American Home Shield. Because you know what? American Home Shield says what it does. Right in the big bold letters as part of its advertising. If we can't fix it, we'll replace it. And they're honest to God truth to it. So when Medicare says this is for you, for your health, and that's all it's for, it's what it's for. When a private organization gets a hold of your money with the caveat that they decide whether or not how it's going to get spent, you might find yourself in a position of fighting for your own life against the program, the people that are supposed to help you. Yeah, keep that in mind. So when you talk about getting rid of Social Security, I got some really strong opinions on not doing that. But then it occurred to me that there is one way that we could get rid of Social Security in this country. and it would not be detrimental to anybody. In the long run, it would probably be more beneficial, and that is this universal basic income. Now, even here in my home state, there's been a pilot program some local charities put on. So they picked 10 families. There's 20 families total. 10 were, or 5 of them were control, so they didn't get no money, and the other 15 got money varying between $50 and $500 a month. And there was some caveats to it, but for the most part, homeless people was given some money, and really low income families were given a little money, extra money a month, and they did it for a year to see what changes. And one of the biggest complaints that you hear from most opponents of UBI is that, well, it just create a whole industry of lazy SOBs who won't work. No, it's the test programs prove that's not true. And they prove without a doubt that is totally bullshit. You're never going to get a big enough UBI. It's like Social Security. Have you any idea, honestly, if you don't have an elderly parent or an elderly member in your family, if you yourself have not experienced the wonderful life of living on Social Security, then you would understand that you are at or below the poverty level for this country, which I always thought was a crock of shit. If you're going to set the poverty level at a certain level, then your bare minimum for Social Security should be the poverty level. I mean, honestly, they're still working on, you get $1,000 a month for your Social Security. How much is your rent? How much is your rent? How much is your rent? How much is your mortgage? See how you better have that house paid for by the time you get to Social Security, or you won't have any money at all. $1,000 a month. There goes most of my. There's most of my money to pay our mortgage. I see how I'd still have to work. I still would have to have a job because I couldn't do anything else. My mom, after my dad died, she was on Social Security and she was hurting, and she was lucky because after Dad died, she got widow's benefits, so she got a little bit extra every month that she wouldn't have got, and then he also he had a pension. He had two. The only way to get a pension these days anymore, outside of the United Auto Workers, is to work for the government. Because the government unions still have pensions in play. That IPERS is one hell of a damn program. The one that the state of Iowa uses. It's very very popular amongst most of the public workers and stuff. And anyway, so if we want to get rid of Social Security altogether, absolutely, you replace it though. That's the other thing. I never hear anybody going on about what I never hear them is how they propose to replace it with. The closest thing I've ever heard is a handful of these Republicans suggesting, "Oh, we have to privatize it. We need to privatize Social Security. We need to get the government completely out of it because the government is so irresponsible in how it spends money." Well, that's true. There's a lot of truth in that aspect. But to suggest that you're going to put all this revenue and this funds into the hands of a privately owned organization whose sole goal is to make a fucking profit, it's like it could be a non-profit. There's no such thing. I'm sorry, America, but the more I understand about how our current system's set up for charities in America, non-profit my ass. The best charities in the world don't pay 100% of the money donated. A certain percentage of all money donated to any charity you donate goes to operating expenses, which includes the salaries of the people running the show. There's when the things that start to get a little funky, in my personal opinion. It's long been understood, if you're willing to go down the right rabbit holes, and you'll find out that the lion's share of large charity groups in this country today are founded and operated by wealthy people, right? It's a philanthropy or whatever. I can't pronounce that word, but I've been so wealthy and so lucky my whole life. Now it's my chance to give back to everybody else. Sure. So what they do is they create these charities, and they even donate money to get them started. But after a while, majority of these charities that function are dependent on the average working steps of America to donate money to them, because that's how this works. And so the wealthy guys set up these non-profit charity organizations to help people, and then some of them will pay 80 cents on the dollar will go toward whatever it is the charity's supposed to support. Maybe 40% of your dollar actually goes to what the charity supports. It depends on the charity. They're not all very clear about that. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge to find out what is what and who's who. Right? Meanwhile, who staffs the board of directors for these places? A lot of uber wealthy people and their family members. Probably more importantly, their family members. I don't know how many extremely wealthy men in this country have their wives as working in the top positions in some non-profit charity organization, some non-profit organization. So they're not there for a profit. I've got $42 billion. I got $42 million in my bank, and I don't ever have to worry about paying my bills. So I really don't need to have a job if I didn't want to, but I want a job, so that I'm going to be the vice executive of whatever the F and F of this nonprofit organization, and the nonprofit's going to pay me, I don't know, $500,000 a year. So you really didn't need that job. So why are you taking a salary? Why do you need a salary? It shouldn't be the joy of helping your fellow man be sufficient enough, right? And see, these charities aren't half as charitable as they pretend to be. They do a lot of good work, don't get me wrong, but they could do a hell of a lot more work than they do. So we could get rid of Social Security altogether if we replaced it with something else. And when all these people that keep going on about how we need to get rid of Social Security don't propose anything other than privatizing it. And why is the reason for privatizing it? Is so those big fat rich people who end up controlling our Social Security and Medicare systems in this country can then basically take their cut of everything we pay in. So at the end of the day, we pay 100% into Social Security, and we get, if you work long enough, you get 120% back. You actually get an investment for your work. Sounds pretty good to me. And you get what you pay for. Yeah, as opposed to, say, Social Security, the government turning all your Social Security money over to a private corporation who's then going to take 20% of it as operational expenses. Right off the bat, you're going to get 20% less of what you would have got if it was under the government aegis. Or there's a limit. They put a ceiling on it and they'll tell you, so you better not live past a certain age, because if you live past a certain age, you're screwed. See, it's the same reason why most of us poor folks end up in a nursing home. They end up in a nursing home as a charity, and so the nursing home, it basically gets awarded your Social Security. Your entire Social Security check minus like $50, depends on what. It's like prison in a lot of ways. They take your money from you to offset your cost of living. Well, we're feeding you 3 times a day and giving you a bed to sleep in. We're giving you a bed to die in, and we got somebody to wipe up after you when you do. That's what you're paying for. It's crude, but it's the truth. Yeah, I can see this basic income, and it would need to be on par with, like I said, the minimum poverty level in this country. So if our minimum poverty level is $14,000, then that's what you should get. You should get the equivalent of that much money every year divided by 12. It's the same way Social Security ought to work, but don't, in my opinion. It should not be less than the poverty level in this country. And in addition to all that, if you take away the need for Social Security at all, then we all pay our living, our UBI tax. And for some of us, that just means we're helping subsidize ourselves. That would be a form of a tax cut a tax break. So we would not be putting as much money towards paying our taxes because it's going to be offset by being paid towards the UBI program. And if you work, you make an income over a certain level, then you should still be required to pay into the damn program. Period. It's why they, when they stop letting you pay into Social Security and Medicare and stuff after certain Social Security, or it's just Medicare, but after 250,000 or something. Oh, excuse me. I think it should be like a 7-figure number. It should be $1 million plus cut off, in my opinion. But everybody should be made to pay for it equally. Everybody. And it's based off of your income. That don't seem fair. Tough shit. Life's on. You know what? Y'all keep telling me to pull myself up by bootstraps. Well, go find yourself some bootstraps. Cry up a river. It's well long past time that Americans start taking care of Americans and taking care of ourselves and doing a better job of it. And corporate America, you've been guzzling at the food trough for 40 years since Reagan stepped in and started this momentum of basically reversing everything that the 50s and 60s saw for people. And it's time to end that phase and get into the next phase, which means rebuilding up the people in America so we stay strong, so we can be great again. All right, we can be greater than we are now. Anyway, this is me. That's Missy. Till next time, whatever the hell, get your goat.